Gonzaga Nation SI rolls on with more coverage of your Gonzaga Bulldogs with myself, Dan Dickau, as well as fellow All-American Adam Morrison. Well, Mo, Gonzaga is obviously the clear-cut favorite to win the WCC, but every year it seems there's a couple upstarts or there's a couple programs that continue to think they have a shot at contending with Gonzaga for the championship. One of those has been BYU since they've come to the league. Gonzaga hosts BYU this Thursday before they host Santa Clara on Saturday. What do you see from BYU? Because I know you follow West Coast basketball pretty well.
Kind of, the same as we've seen in the years past, like really solid on the perimeter, decent bigs, not overly athletic, but bigs that kind of know their role, and then they play within themselves as a team. They're always going to play hard defensively. They're always going to take care of the basketball. Not terribly athletic, but not where it's, a hamper to the team. They can compete is what I'm trying to say. It's going to be another tough battle. They've had success against us at our home floor in years past. So I'm really looking forward to the matchup Thursday. But, I think talent-wise, obviously, we're better.
Yeah, talent-wise, we definitely get the upper hand. I think, to be honest with you, I think talent-wise, we have the upper hand against anybody in the country outside of, and I don't even know if I can say this, Duke. I mean, you look at top 8 talent, I think we beat them talent. Mm-hmm. Paulo Banchero's pretty dang good, though.
He's a good player.
So you go back to BYU. They just came off of a 52-43 win against St. Mary's, and usually you're looking at a crisp St. Mary's offensive team and a high-paced BYU team. That wasn't the case. When you look at a score like that, does it make you want to go back and watch the game and prep for your radio broadcast? Or you're like, the stat sheet shows me enough.
Yeah, stat sheet shows me enough. 52-43. That's a low scoring game. Obviously, those teams have had good games in the past against each other. Then obviously they know what each other runs. So you can kind of get into a slow, trudgy game. And I think St. Mary's rather play that style anyway. But 52-43 could be a tough one. So I'm just going to skip that one for the prep.
Yeah. You look at Gonzaga had 117 points against Pepperdine. Quick math, 52-43. That combined score doesn't even match up with the 117. So I think I'm going to be right there with you and not rewatching that game. No. When you look at BYU, though, they came in the league. Dave Rose was their head coach. They were playing really up-tempo. Mark Pope's now the head coach. Did you ever play against Mark in the NBA?
No, I don't think so.
Was he done by that time?
I think so.
Well,
no idea.
Yeah, I don't know if he's going to see this, but he'll probably text me if by chance someone at BYU tells me he didn't really play much. Yeah. But I guess you could say that about myself too.
And myself too.
Yeah, but the style that BYU plays, though, they do a nice job of letting guys get up and down the floor.
Yeah.
Until their injuries this year, they tried to play inside out and space it and then get the guys open at the three-point line. When you look at an inside out attack as a scorer like yourself, what's your focus?
As an inside out attack?
If you're a wing and you know your team's playing inside out and you're like, man, I got to get the ball inside here to open something up for me. What do you look at?
If you got a good post player, obviously, especially if he's a double team guy, you can throw it in and then rotate to open spots. As far as trying to get yourself going as a scorer, I guess if you're going to take shots and not throw it inside, you just hope you make them.
Simple game, really.
Well, if you're going to buck the system a little bit and try to get yourself going, that's really all you can do. But some coaches allow you to have that freedom. I don't know how Mark Pope, it seems like he allows their players to play with some freedom. If you're going inside out and then, maybe you try to get out and run, then try to get the ball early in transition and attack in that situation. It was always tough though. You played on the perimeter as well. You don't want to not throw it to your bigs, but sometimes it's like you're kind of in the way, not in a bad way, but I could take my guy and I can get a layup it's a better shot than a 6-foot jump hook with hands in your face. Would you ever get upset at guys at Gonzaga? They're just like,
well, and that's the beauty of how the offense is evolved.
Yeah,
it's almost like, and if you look analytically, a post up is not a good shot anymore.
Yeah, that's what I'm
it
saying.
really isn't.
Yeah.
A lot of the post ups are to create foul pressure.
Yeah.
Now Gonzaga is a little bit of an outlier because Drew Timmy's great on the post.
Yeah.
But I agree with you. If you don't have a rock solid low post threat, space the floor, bring guys up, give driving angles to a guy who's skilled on the perimeter.
Yeah, no, I'd agree. I mean, that's like kind of how the game's going now. And like you said, we have an outlier in Drew Timmy's back to the basket that you don't really see, especially bounce down. They could still get a good shot. But yeah, analytically now, pick and dive and then fade your way out towards the line to the free throw line and stuff like that.
So BYU's come in here. They've knocked off Gonzaga a couple times. In particular, the one I remember is the year Gonzaga was looking at an undefeated season.
Yeah.
Was that the year
you were on? Yeah,
the Final Four team. Was that the year you were on staff? Because
no,
I can't keep years straight.
It was I was my years on like Pangos was on the team and stuff like that. But yeah, that I thought just from an outside perspective, that was a good loss for that team, even though it was senior night and they lost at home. Like we didn't have to go to the NCAA tournament undefeated. It's the first year they made the Final Four, I believe. It was Nigel's year, I believe.
Yeah.
Yeah. So like it took that pressure away. Still number one seed, still whatever, and they just didn't have to worry about that. So sometimes I look at those losses, I'm not rooting for them, but when they happen, a lot of times
you're not heartbroken like a lot of fans are.
A lot of fans are upset.
Yeah.
And, oh my gosh, what's going on? And rightfully so. That's why we have good fans, because they care. But also it's like, in the context of things, like this is a lot of pressure that just got alleviated for nothing. That would be on them if they walked into the tournament. Because how much do they have to talk about it this year? I mean, that was part of the issue, last year, for the championship game. I think if it was such a layup for Baylor, motivation wise, not that you wouldn't be motivated, but there is real things of like, hey man, they haven't talked about you guys for 2 weeks. They're talking about this team being undefeated.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a real thing. And then guys get a little bit more juiced up. Like, yeah, man, let's ruin this. And then blah, blah, blah. I think you can take that pressure away. I think it's just good it's easier for teams.
BYU had a rock star, kind of like you were a rock star in college, right after you, in Jimmer Fredette. Obviously that was the point where you were in the NBA. So you're focused a little bit on your own stuff, but do you remember the Jimmer mania across the country at all?
Yeah, man, I remember. Didn't they play him in the tournament? He killed us.
Yeah.
No, like, it was a real thing. And obviously he's a great player. And, I remember Brian Michelson saying, like, can you imagine if not you guys, but like you got to play in Provo with the crowd, like what you would have done. I'm just like, it's probably good if we didn't, because it would have been bad. So yeah, I mean, he was.
Why would that have been bad?
I don't know. That's what he said.
Okay.
I mean, you know what I mean? Like that's what he was referencing. And I was
All
like,
right,
well, yeah, maybe so. Like, yeah. So he's obviously a good player, and hopefully they can find that type of player again when they move to the Big 12. Aren't they going to the Big 12 then? No?
Yeah. I don't know if it's this year or next year is their last year in the WCC. And then, they're going to the Big 12.
Yeah.
I mean, their facilities are Big 12 level. I mean, the Marriott Center is what, 17,000, 18,000? It's a great atmosphere.
It is. That's what I was referencing before with Brian. He's like, it would have been a hyped game and a lot of fanfare and stuff like that. It is a great atmosphere, especially obviously when we play there. It's sold out and they get going a little bit. They beat us. It was 2 years ago before COVID, senior night there, and they stormed the court, and me and Huddy are trying to finish up a broadcast, and there's kids everywhere. And so it was an interesting broadcast because we do an hour post game. So we're trying to get through that, and they're kind of giving us crap and stuff. And it was funny, but it's like, all right, kiddos, and like have fun.
Yeah.
So it was cool, but it's a good college basketball atmosphere. There's not very many of them in the country left that are positive, you know what I mean?
Yeah, that are positive.
Yeah.
I don't think you're going to hear a lot of 4-letter words coming out of that student section.
No, not at all.
You would have repeated a couple 4-letter words back, though, wouldn't you have? You played with an edge.
You would have too. Why am I just portrayed as some heathen?
You're probably
here?
right.
Like,
well, on that, is there every young player, the first time you're on TV, right? You go back and you watch it over and over, right? When you're in college. I remember my freshman year, at UW, we were getting just spanked by Arizona. This was the year after Arizona won their title.
Oh, okay.
So they had Bibby, Jason Terry, Miles Simon, Mike Dickerson. They were loaded.
Everybody, yeah.
They had everybody. And we were getting just crushed at Heckett. And I remember there was like a foul or something. I got knocked to the floor and I threw off a little F-bomb and the camera was zoomed in on me. And I remember that was the first time like I was on a national TV game and then it was a zoom in and it just happened to be I dropped
were your parents
a word.
Excited?
No, but my wife, who was my girlfriend at the time, she consistently reminds me of that if something, like, hey, do you remember that?
There you go.
It wasn't my brightest moment, but it's the emotion of the game, right?
Yeah, no, exactly.
No, in the right setting, there's nothing wrong with it.
Yeah, no, exactly. If it's in the right context, I think swearing is highly not frowned upon. I enjoy it if it's in the right context.
And again, the right context. I mean, you couldn't do it doing what you do, and I couldn't do it with the radio. But you have an hour of post game.
Yeah.
Because I know I listen to you guys a lot when I head home after our broadcast.
Yeah, you guys just...
We do 2.5 minutes.
Yeah,
and we're
you
out.
sign off and you guys are out the door. Yeah, we have an hour post game, hour pre-game shows as well. So we burn the midnight oil or whatever, you light the candle, whatever the hell that people say about that stuff. But yeah, it's fun. I mean, there's some games where like the last game, Pepperdine, it was a 40-point blowout or whatever, basically, or 30. So you're kind of like, what do you talk about after half an hour? But you got to pay the bills.
Yeah.
So I get the aspect of it, but sometimes it's like, okay, how are we going to get through this segment without repeating what I just said 15 minutes ago earlier? I got to say it a different way now.
Well, that's the nice thing with us as we get going with this Gonzaga Nation SI. We'll start to have former teammates and players from Gonzaga where they'll join us and we can ask their stories as opposed to us kind of talking about each particular game, which is fun in its own right. Yeah. But, it's one of those things where at some point you can only talk this blowout positively that many times.
Yeah, no, because then you start looking at, nitpicking stuff that really doesn't matter. Because a lot of times in a blowout, there'll be 5 or 6 more turnovers than there should have been because guys play a little bit loose after they're up 25. So then if you look at the stat sheet, it's like, Gonzaga won by 30 and they had 17 turnovers. And then are you going to sit there and be like, they need to take care of the basketball? You know what I mean? Of course they do. But my goodness, they were up 25 for, 3/4 of that game. You might throw a bounce pass on a back cut that you probably shouldn't throw, or you might try to charge, you have a charge or something. So like, that's where it gets sticky. Cause then I don't want to sit there and just be like nitpicking, but also, like I said, sometimes you're like, well, it's kind of tough to go over, every aspect of the game. What is nice is, Huddy's obviously professional. And then a lot of times we preview the next game coming up or we just we'll talk Houston Astros baseball and stuff.
Is that your baseball team, the Astros?
No, Huddy's from Houston.
He is.
So yeah.
Okay.
A lot of the topics are about when they cheated and stuff like that. And we've gone on some tangents and I had people tell me like, actually, we like it. Like talk about something else.
Yeah. Well, let's do the boring thing and preview Santa Clara.
Let's do it.
What do you know of Santa Clara? Or have you started your prep yet?
I have not started my prep for Santa Clara. I think, are they any good? I have no clue.
I think they're coming off a COVID pause.
Yeah.
They were 10-5 in the non-conference. Herb Sendik's a really good coach, but can they break into the top 4 in the league? That's the question.
See, that's the thing. And a little bit of, the lack of understanding of where everybody else is at. I've been focusing on San Francisco because they were 12-1 last time I looked.
Yeah.
Okay. Obviously BYU is always up there with that big win against Oregon early in the season. And then they've consistently been the team that's challenged us the most besides St. Mary's the last, 5-10 years. And then St. Mary's, obviously. So with some of these other programs, it's not like you just completely overlook them, but you kind of want to be like, are you really a pretender or contender? Not contender in the sense of, you're going to uplift, outseat Gonzaga, but do you have a real shot of being an NIT or better type of team? You know what I'm saying? Yeah. And I think those 4, counting ourselves, I just mentioned, definitely do. Now, could Pepperdine And Santa Clara obviously with a good record, move into that. Absolutely, anybody has that chance. But I think the top half of the league is a lot better than the middle half or lower half, I guess, this year.
Knowing that the league is better, and I asked Lorenzo Romar this before the game the other day, is this the best you've ever seen the league? He said, without a doubt.
Mm-hmm. I think so too.
Thinking about how good the league is, you and I have both seen the league at some bad stretches too. Yeah. What was the worst team that you played against when you were at Gonzaga?
Oh, that's a good question. The worst.
Like you just walk in knowing it's shoot around. Hey, we're preparing for a 40-point win.
Yeah.
What are they going to throw at us to make it look interesting the first 10 minutes of the game before we figure it out at the second media timeout?
Yeah. That was a hard one because, I mean, honestly, I know this is not the topic, but we didn't blow anybody out like the teams do now. So I'm trying to think of was there any games where these teams were just absolutely terrible. I like to say San Francisco, but we lost to San Francisco my sophomore year. So like I can't even honestly off the top of my head think of like a really, really bad West Coast Conference team when I was playing. Yeah. That makes sense. And maybe we were obviously good. I only lost 2 conference games of my.
But you guys got everybody's best shot.
Yes, exactly. But we weren't as deep and we didn't have as, much as talented guys. And that's, when I say talent, it's based off, the recruiting services. So like we could sit here and argue, maybe we'll have those conversations in the summer when the season's not going on. Like, all right, hypothetically, this player versus this player in Gonzaga history and do it with logic and facts. But we didn't have, Hunter Silas comes off the bench. He's a top 6 recruit. Probably would have started for us.
He would start for any other team in the country.
Yes, that's what I'm saying. Yeah. So it's not a knock on who played with us before. It's just based off of, kind of talent. So we never blew anybody out. You guys were kind of like that too, right?
We didn't. The only true team that was really bad in the league at the time was St. Mary's.
Oh,
and
yeah.
This was before Randy Bennett took it over.
Is that when they had Big World or Big Continent or whatever? Or was that
no,
right?
Brad Millard. That was a few years before my group. But we beat St. Mary's, I think, by 50 on the road.
Yeah.
And Anthony Reason, if you remember that name, he had the A-Train. He had the greatest dunk I've ever seen in my life. And this was before TV.
Yeah, I've always wanted to ask some of the older guys because I've heard guys reference that dunk. Does anybody have it on like old game film or at all? Like you guys had to film the game.
Well, we had the coach's video because there was so for example, the game against Pepperdine where I hit 9 threes and a half, that game wasn't on TV.
Yeah.
I have the coach's copy somewhere.
Yeah.
We had a couple other games where I still have the coach's DVD copy at my house, but that game, no TV. And I think it was just a raw feed of like a coach having a camcorder up top. That's how far the program has come. Mm-hmm. But it was at the end of the first half, and somebody took like a quick hurried 3, and Anthony Reason literally sprinted from like the top of the key on one end all the way down the floor, and he caught it. And I don't know how he caught it. He reached his arm way back, and he jumped over 2 guys were trying to grab it as well. Mm-hmm. He jumped over the top and threw it down. The whole gym stopped. Mm-hmm. Like our whole team just stopped and looked at him like, did you really just do that? Yeah. And we went into the locker room and everyone was just like looking at him in amazement for like a minute. I mean, you could ask Alex Hernandez, Zach Gord. That's
what I'm saying. Like,
everybody.
I've heard that from multiple guys from that era who, I played with at, open run and so consider them friends and understand when they're not just bigging up their own generation or own group. Like that train dunk was the best thing I've ever seen in my entire life in a basketball game. I've heard multiple guys say it. I'm always like, well, where is the tape? You know what I mean? And so it's funny you say it wasn't on TV, but that's going to be one of those things where if I can remember and go to the next game, one of the interns or one of the, assistant coach guys low on the totem pole that does cuts the film like, hey, what year was that? 99? 2000?
It would have been the 01-02 season.
So then, hey, you got to go through 01-02. You got to look for the St. Mary's film. They could probably dig it up for you and bring it. So
go through the archives.
That needs to be spread upon the Gonzaga fan base. Like, hey, let's not forget about this era and these type of dunks.
Yes.
So you need to find that.
Oh, that's it. Okay, Gonzaga Nation SI, we're on it. Let's figure it out.
Let's figure it out.
hands down, because you've probably seen some plays over the time of your career, high school, college, NBA, that's just jaw dropping.
Yeah.
That's what that play was.
Yeah. No, I've seen a couple dunks where you just like shake your head and where you kind of just pause and you're like, how that's like doing that on a small gym or a small hoop, like 8 foot. Like, how do you do that in real life, And like I said, I'm not kidding. Like, this is not just for the show. Like, I've heard Foxy talk about that. I've heard Al talk about that. You mentioned it. I remember having beers with Zach Gord a few years ago. He talked about that. Like, because we always talk about some of the old stuff. Chunkus mentioned that dunk to me, Corey Violet. So like, I'm always like, I want to see this dunk. Like,
yes.
So yeah, it's on you guys. Hopefully maybe the fans too can dig it up. Maybe somebody has it on YouTube or something, or old games on YouTube. So it's 0102 at St. Mary's.
At St. Mary's at the end of the first half.
Okay. So then
mind blowing.
We get people a reference.
All right. Well, anyone listening to this podcast, if you have any other plays that you thought were phenomenal, send it to put a comment on our YouTube, on our Instagram, social media, Twitter platforms, whatever it may be. Who knows? Maybe our social media coordinator can dig those up. So for Adam Morrison, I'm Dan Dickau. We look forward to continuing to share the conversation at Gonzaga basketball.